Hi, and welcome back. It's Just Ask the Question. I am your host, Brian Karem. With me is a good friend and former Nerd Avenger, Waj Ali, the author of The Left Hook and the hardest working man in journalism today. Waj, it's always a pleasure to see you, brother. How you doing?
I would say current member of the Nerd Avengers.
Yes.
Goonies never say die. Times have been better. I mean, look, compared to the people in Gaza, in Tehran, in Lebanon, at these U.S. bases, we can't complain. But, you wake up every day to a new set of horrors, which could have been avoided, Brian, if we simply had competent, intelligent individuals in leadership who weren't cosplaying as crusaders and alpha men. But sadly, this is a situation where we are, where extremists in here, extremists abroad, extremists in Israel are pouring gasoline on a fire that threatens to engulf the world. And you saw that attack at home, the attack on the synagogue. I think we're going to see more examples of blowback, more examples of Islamophobia and anti-Semitism, more civilians being targeted, more American tourists being targeted. And then we just found out, as of this recording, that 2,200 Marines are now being sent.
Yeah. Gee, there's a shock. He's been threatening that for a while. But I have cousins I haven't been able in Lebanon. I haven't talked to in days. Can't reach them. So I hope they're okay, but I don't know. They live in Beirut in the suburbs, and we see. I guess the thing that why I decided we really needed to talk was you and I made a similar comment about the members of the Trump administration who are now living for their safety on military bases, which safety from what is what I want to know. The implication is that they're not safe among other Americans, but I also wonder if it's something else. Your thoughts?
I think two things. Number one, we saw Pete Hegseth, again, this alpha cosplay crusader. They act like tough guys, but apparently he's banned photographers because he didn't from the Pentagon because he didn't like some unflattering photos. They're so weak, these snowflakes,
I
right? All these
apparently, and I talked to a couple of people that were involved. He didn't like how his posterior was shown, but
I mean, there you go. I mean, these are the world's most fickle people. Every accusation is a confession. It's all projection all the time. They're apparently against cancel culture, but they're so fragile. They're canceling books they don't like. They don't like the word DEI. They literally removed the most competent, qualified people from our national security, from our FBI, from our defense because they were a woman or a person of color or gay. So now you have these dumbasses, these Doge dumbasses, these 19-year-olds. You got the head of our countering violent extremism program in America is Thomas Fugate, who's 23 years old, who was literally a grocer, right? So you got the world's most incompetent people. And the reason why I'm mentioning that they're so fragile is because I'm sure someone maybe criticized Pam Bondi. Maybe someone took a photo of her. Maybe someone said, hey, stop covering the Epstein files. That's what happened to Stephen Miller, right? He got confronted. So then they're like, oh no, we're being attacked, Brian. Oh no, we're being threatened. We have to leave with our family and go to military bases. That's number one.
yeah.
Number two, why I think they're in military bases, Brian, is I think they know how this is going to end. And I think they see the writing on the wall. And there's a reason why Reuters, it was about 2 months ago, reported that the Trump administration was threatening to sanction the ICC unless the ICC preemptively promised not to charge any members of the Trump administration with crimes after they leave office. Brian, does that sound like an innocent administration?
Nothing about this administration is innocent. Nothing about it is public service. Nothing about it is logical. Nothing about it is anything but corrupt. So I would have to say no. But no. I'm going to side with no. But what I find more reprehensible by the day is that as we sit here and discuss this, I'm watching the divisiveness of the United States chew us up. And the fact is we all have more in common than we have different. And right now I don't understand how we can sanction a war against people in Iran when there are people in the United States who have family. This is an interconnected world, man. I've got family
Absolutely.
there. Your family is all over the world. We have friends and family members all over the world. And it's like
That's
we're
right.
waging war with ourselves. So it's symptomatic to me of a greater evil. And that's man's inhumanity to man. I won't dive off into that, intellectual discourse, but I mean, that's something that bothers me in great extreme. But when I look at the moves that the Donald Trump administration is making for this war, what bothers me most is that there is absolutely a complete and total disconnect from reality. We are in right now, it seems like a proxy war with Russia. We back Ukraine, they back Iran. We say we're working together, but there's anything but that going on, and we're inching closer and closer and closer to that nuclear conflagration. And it's like nobody cares, or
Yep.
recognizes it. And
Yeah.
go ahead. Yeah.
I'm,
I'm sorry.
no,
That
no.
was my
I'm
rant.
No, it's not Iran. I'm so glad you mentioned it. And like, I do want to focus on Lebanon because Lebanon's being lost right now, right? Because everyone's focused on Tehran, as they should, because the United States and Israel launched this illegal war. It killed Ayatollah Khamenei. And all that Israel and the United States did, well, Donald Trump, I should say, is they replaced the older, dying Khamenei with the younger, more radicalized son, Mustafa Khamenei. They bombed a school. They killed 165 girls. Over 1,000 civilians have died that we know of. As this is happening, folks, Israel is aggressively bombing another capital of another major country, Beirut. They're saying now over 700,000 Lebanese have been displaced. Israel is openly saying, oh, this is a no-go zone. The no-go zone is a third of the country. They're saying now at least 100 children have been killed. Hundreds of Lebanese have died, right? So as this is happening at Tehran, and as this is happening, the ongoing genocide in Palestine, right, in Gaza, you're seeing literally the mass displacement of now nearly 1 million people in Lebanon, Brian, right? So this war has spread. You're seeing U.S. consulates being attacked. The U.S. consulate was on fire in Dubai. Pakistani Shias are responding to the murder, the assassination of Khamenei, and they tried to attack the consulate. Nearly 24 people were killed. Then you're seeing radicalized individuals say, oh, this is a war against Islam. Oh, this is a religious war, Lindsey Graham. Oh, you hate Muslims, Representative Ogles in Tuberville. Okay, now they're attacking synagogues and attacking. There was a synagogue that was attacked in. I think it was Temple Israel, and there was in Virginia yesterday, another alleged ISIS member. So the world is now a battlefield. All these innocent people are going to die. And as this is happening, Brian, instead of people calming down the temperature, you're seeing Representative Andy Ogles and Fine and Tuberville openly pouring gasoline on Islamophobia.
Well, and
What do you think is going to happen?
what do you think's going to happen? That's what. And when they talk about it being a religious war, that hacks me off to no end, because in Lebanon, which by and large sides with the United States, its army, and it's all supplied. You can't walk anywhere in Beirut or anywhere in Lebanon without seeing that the military is supplied by and supported by the United States government. And yet, in a country that has Druze, Muslims, and Catholics and Jews and a few Druids. I think there's some tree worshipers up there, and in the cedars of Lebanon. All of that. It's not. I don't understand how you call it a religious war against Islam when that is the melting pot of the Middle East. Lebanon has always, and it's always the freaking battlefield. As soon as some shit hits the fan, they're bombing Lebanon. And then my cousins have to live through it if they can. I don't know where it ends, but it doesn't look like it's going to be good. And
I don't think so. I don't think this is ending anytime soon, sadly. And especially if, even if the United States, even if Donald Trump says, I won, I'm the best president, they love me, we're finished, Iran's not going to stop because
yes,
Iran realizes no matter what we do, Israel wants to wipe us off the face of the earth. So they've gamed this out. So they're like, okay, we did the U.S. Iran deal. It was a huge coup for Obama. It brought Iran to the table, eased off sanctions. What did Donald Trump do? Blew it up. Then last year, remember, Brian, again, Donald Trump gets dog walked by these white Christian nationalists and Netanyahu, and he bombs Iran. He says, I've obliterated Iran's nuclear capabilities. He didn't. So now you're seeing this happen during Ramadan, a joint strike a war that kills Khamenei. So Iran's like, we're going to make you bleed. we're going to gouge you. And we're not just going to gouge Israel and the United States. We're going to gouge the world. We're going to draw Europe into this. We're going to draw Middle East into this. We're going to choke off the Strait of Hormuz. You are old enough to remember, Brian. I'm kind of old enough to remember the two other
You're telling me I'm
price
old.
shocks. You are young enough to remember. Remember the last two times there were major repercussions that lasted for years as a
Yes.
result of oil shocks. 73, OPEC decided to do what? Put embargo on who? United States and the West for supporting Israel in the Yom Kippur War. After it was over, it wasn't just over, folks. We felt the repercussions for years. 1979, Brian, Iran War, Iran-Iraq War. It seems like we never learn. It's like it's like the remake of Groundhog's Day, but as a horror movie.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's what I say is we repeat history, we don't learn from it time and time again. The question I have is, all right, so you made mention of something that I find fascinating and that people seem to, first of all, I don't think we're getting any news in the United States from the war. I think most of it is not being covered. We don't even have the cool videos that we had during the Gulf War, showing the bombs coming down a chimney or knocking on a door and saying boo and then blow it up. We don't got any of that. What we have is Donald Trump telling us what's going on, and I have to go to the BBC or Al Jazeera to find out what's really going on out there. Donald Trump has said, by the way, that the Strait of Hormuz isn't closed; it's safe, and he's going to provide, tugs and support for people who want to go through it, so it's safe. You can cruise through there. Caroline Levitt last Tuesday said, "Hey, pretty soon oil prices will be cheaper than ever because everything's safe." By the way, gas has never been $1.85 a gallon. Look, just 2 weeks. What was it? 2 weeks ago, during his wonderful State of the Union address, when he said that the stock market was at 50,000 and gas is $1.85. Well, gas today is about average $3.60 a gallon, and the stock market I think is still falling at 46. It's 4,000 points lower than it was when he made his speech. It's in free fall. But the thing that brings it all home with the lies, and you pointed this out 4 months ago, all right, so first he broke the treaty with Iran. Then he wanted to make a new treaty with Iran. What's the impetus? Now, nobody's mourning the mullahs from Iran. Nobody's saying, hey, they're great people. But we had something that was working. We killed it. And these people are already difficult. You're going to try and bring them back to the table. Why should they trust us? You won't. On the first deal. Then 4 months ago, we were told we obliterated their nuclear capability. Now we were told that one of the reasons why we had to start a war with Iran was because they were 2 weeks away from a nuclear weapon. Well, so much. How do you obliterate something and build it back in 4 months? They haven't been able to build a nuclear bomb in 60 years. Suddenly they could do in 4 months what they couldn't do in 60 years. It seems ridiculous to me, and yet we still swallow it. And watch, I still don't know the reason why we went to Iran. We still haven't gotten the reason. Now, you and I both know what it is.
I appreciate that. No, but it's good. It's good to remind people that it's only been 2 weeks, and Brian, I appreciated when Republicans in the past used to at least try. They used to put on a performance. They came up with a story, weapons of mass destruction.
Yes.
Remember that? They put in effort.
I mean, George Bush may have lied to us, but he put a little effort into it.
Yeah, damn it. At least, they don't even try. They're so sloppy and lazy. At least agree on they don't even agree on shared talking points. You had Mark Wayne Mullen coming out there and say, this isn't a war. And the reporter's like, Sir, Pete Kexeth just called it a war. He goes, oh, okay. So no shared talking points, no exit strategy, no entry strategy. They can't even stay on the same page when it comes to the justification of the war. Donald Trump said it's an imminent threat. Then, of course, our own intelligence says, actually, there's no imminent threat. Iran has no nuclear weapons. The ballistic missiles don't reach here. Then there's reporting from the New York Times that says he got dog-walked, essentially, by Netanyahu and kind of got bullied into it and then kind of got cajoled and flattered into it. Then you have Marco Rubio literally reiterating that, Israel was going to attack anyway. And then we decided, if Israel attacks anyway, then we have to retaliate. Then he walks it back. Then the Washington Post confirms it. Then Times of Israel confirms it. And then a week and a half ago, Donald Trump says, okay, regime change. Then he says, okay, no regime change, no boots on the ground. Now he's sending 2,300 Marines to the Middle East. This is what happens when you have the world's dumbest people in charge. This is what happens when the world's most ignorant, vulgar, dumb,
Maniacs.
vicious people don't understand anything. Now you have something that should have never happened, now has escalated into a global crisis. And folks, it's come home like exactly what we predicted. If you kill Iranians, Palestinians, Lebanese, displace them, say you're doing a religious war during Ramadan, what do you think is going to happen? There's going to be a radicalized individual or a member of ISIS or Al Qaeda say, oh, really? This is the crusade against Islam? All right, mother effers, I'll bring the war at home, asymmetrical warfare. So now Americans at home aren't safe. Muslims, Jews, those who look Muslimy aren't going to be safe. The minorities are going to be screwed. U.S. troops aren't safe. U.S. consulates aren't safe. U.S. companies are safe. Brian, what did we get? And literally, what did we accomplish? We killed the older, dying Khamenei and replace him with a more young, radicalized Khamenei.
Which
That's
we
literally what
haven't
happened.
seen.
We'll kill him. We'll kill everyone. We'll do it. And now if you're seeing what he's doing deliberately, he's not saying the Iranian regime. He's saying Iran. So now he's saying this country of 90 million people, right? They shoot people, they behead people, they're crazy. It's like someone saying all Americans are like this. So imagine now the president of the United States saying it's not just the Iranian regime, it's the Iranian people. And that message that matters in messaging, because now if you're Iranian, you're like, oh, you're not just at war with the regime, you're at war with me.
Right. And by extension, every person in the Middle East, because there isn't a person who doesn't have a relative in the Middle East who doesn't feel the pain of this particular war. And I do believe it can only get worse. I don't see an exit strategy for this guy.
There's none.
And it'll be ongoing for how long? How long?
Because they also have proxies, right? Because we haven't even talked about the proxies. Hezbollah is allied, even though it's weakened. Hamas is allied. You also have the Houthis who are allied, right? Then you have extremist groups who will capitalize on this. I always want to remind people that the number one most successful recruitment tool of ISIS and Al Qaeda during the war on terror was the narrative that the West is at war with Islam. And they simply pointed to the rhetoric of the United States and the actions that see Israel and United States teaming up against Muslims. They're openly saying it. And then over here, you had Islamophobes that said, see, it's Islam versus the West. And so you had extremists who get better, who get more money, who get more recruitment, right? Meanwhile, the rest of us die. And as this is happening, I don't know if you saw the comments made by Tuberville, Ogles, and Fine.
Yeah. But where is please, Lord, let somebody win in November that can turn this shit around. I'm looking for a Democrat, anybody who will, just climb above the bar set by Donald Trump. It's a low bar.
It's so low, Brian.
Can we just get someone elected that can crawl over that bar? You have any hope for the midterms?
I do.
You took a long breath there, man.
Okay, let me put it this way. I think we still are not taking the threat seriously, the domestic threat. And what I mean by that is Donald Trump has already told us. He has told us the plan. He said last month, Brian, Republicans take over the elections.
Yeah.
Then we found out reporting that Republican activists are bandying about a type of interpretation of executive power that if there's a quote unquote emergency, the president can take over elections. We heard Donald Trump talk about Iran meddling in the 2020-2024 elections, right? Nonsense. Then we heard him talk about China. Then we saw Tulsi Gabbard join the FBI during a raid in Fulton County. Then we saw something similar happening in Maricopa in Arizona. Then we've heard Donald Trump openly talk about him running again. He cannot run again. And then we've also seen him, pardon 1,600 insurrectionists. And then going back full circle, Brian, if they're moving to bunkers, does it seem like, does anything that I just said seem like an administration that is willing to legally and peacefully relinquish power?
No, I have said, and I think you and I are in agreement on this, that even if Donald Trump were impeached and convicted, it would take a crowbar and at least 50 cc's of sodium nitrate to get him out. And if you don't know what that is, look it up. But it would take a lot of drugs to get him out of that Oval Office. He would leave claw marks on the wall.
I completely. This guy will burn the world down,
To
Brian.
rule over the embers. Yes,
Yeah, he will. He's a cornered New York City rat who will literally chew through anything and everyone. This is a man who does not care about anyone. I mean, I don't know if you saw that clip from last night where some reporter asked him, "Do you have any words to say to the community, right? The Temple Israel community, or the attack in Virginia?" He goes, "Yeah, it's tragic," and then he just lumbered away. Tragic. He can't even feign empathy, Brian.
no.
He doesn't care.
I'm curious why. All right, so my two questions from this. I don't think this is just from having spent some time with the man. I do not think he'll be around for the next State of the Union address. I believe he thinks this is going to be his last one, and that's why he wanted a record length to beat Clinton. I think he's physically and mentally deteriorating to the point where he may not be around a year from now. But that scares me even more because J.D. Vance is not exactly the sanest human being on the planet. But my question is, at least Vance, when it's small, but I've seen some measure of a man who once said Donald Trump was a Nazi. I've seen him reach out across the aisle a little bit. What's it going to take? Because I don't think this ends until we quit demonizing each other. How can the left reach across to the right and the right reach across to the left? How do we reach out to each other?
So I have one disagreement. I don't have any faith in JD Vance. JD Vance only believes in JD Vance.
I agree with you.
And he just came out today in North Carolina and is now parroting all the lies and shifting blame to Somalis to distract from the economy. So he's just as bad as Donald Trump, maybe worse, because he's not even a true believer. He's willing to be a chameleon. So that's number one. Number two, I think there's about 20 to 25% of America we can't win. I think we've lost them. And you've seen the polls for the last 10 years. I think the rest, there's two things. Number one, they're suffering. And this is where you don't have to gloat over their suffering. You don't even have to say, I told you so. But you kind of have to be like, okay, how long until you say uncle, right? Because they're suffering. And look, these gas prices and these grocery prices are going to go up because of the what's happening in the markets right now, right? They're going to keep suffering. They're going to keep seeing more body bags. More soldiers are going to die, sadly, tragically, unnecessarily. We found out that at least $12 billion were wasted in the first 6 days of the war. We're going to see more corruption as more and more Americans can't afford gas and groceries. We're going to see these corrupt people literally making billions of dollars off of crypto. You see the anger already there. I think the best way to win them over, honestly, Brian, strategically, is look at the narrative that works. Look at the narrative that won over a lot of Trump voters and made them go to Mamdani. That's making them go to Talarico, right? If you do a 1% versus the 99%, a top versus bottom, us versus the elites narrative, you will win over a lot of people, because what that also does is it gives them a villain. It gives them a hero. It literally is an accurate representation of what's happening. They can feel it, right? Donald Trump can BS. Republicans can always BS about climate change and Somalis and Haitians and Muslims. You can never lie to people about what's in their wallet. You can't say the economy is going great. People are like, nah, man, it's really tough. No, shut up. It's going great. And they can't lie to us about what's happening in our wallet. So you unite over a type of economic populism. And I think that type of a narrative that takes on the broligarchy and the 1% will be the overarching narrative that will win over a lot of people. Because, Bernie and AOC tried it out.
Like James Carville right now. It's the economy, stupid.
Well, it's the economy, stupid, but he's also, Carville's outdated because Carville says play possum, which is the terrible advice.
That's his advice.
Number two, he says abandon all woke shit, which is BS. 50% of Americans want to abolish ICE. The majority of Americans no longer support what Israel is doing. A majority of Americans want fighters. You see the most popular elected official is Zoran Mamdani, who leaned into wokeness, right? So that's an outdated model. You need a refined model of that where you say, okay, we're not going to throw anyone under the bus. Everyone's coming along. The farmers coming along, Lebanese are coming along, trans kids coming along, Christians coming along, Muslims coming along. And guess who our common enemy is? The Epstein class. And this is where I think the framing really works, Brian, is the Epstein class, which again, a majority of Americans don't trust Donald Trump. They think he's doing a cover up. They want a release of the transparency of the Epstein files. A majority of Americans are like, holy crap, it's a big club. It doesn't matter if you're right or left. If you're rich and the 1%, you're literally raping us and raping girls. I think it gives you an entry point for this type of narrative that will win over just enough people, Brian, for us to get the right type of candidates, if we have free and fair elections, to put in the right type of change. What do you think?
Well, I'll disagree with you on one thing. I think that no matter what you say, if you start talking woke, you're going to lose a lot of people.
But you don't have to say woke.
Yeah, you don't have to say it.
All I'm saying is you don't have to throw them under the bus.
All I think you have to say are civil rights for everyone, universal civil rights.
That's all I'm saying. Don't throw anyone under the bus. Say for everyone.
I think the Democratic Party has to be the big tent party. So it's got to include people that normally I disagree with what you say, but will defend to death your right to say it. It has to replace the idea of I disagree with you and I'm right, you're wrong, you die. It's the method. I heard Andy Bashir say something. He said, if you tell people that they're voting against their own self-interest, you're telling them they're stupid. And we got to change. You could be right, but you got to change. You got to change the language so that they understand what it is that they gain by being your compadre rather than your enemy. I think,
but I think to that point, we're storytelling creatures, right, Brian? You have to give people a story. The easiest story is it is us versus the 1%. We're the good guys. We're identifying the antagonists. They're the ones standing between you and affordable housing.
I agree with
a living wage. They're the ones who don't pay any taxes. They're the ones who are literally spending $400 million on a ballroom. They're the ones like Jeff Bezos spending $50 million on a wedding. They're the ones gloating as they're gaining
$1 million on a fucking yacht. And he could have taken that money and sustained the Washington Post for 20 years.
Yes, yeah, so I think bullshit. You do that, and then you connect it to Epstein. Now you have rage. Now you have people on your side. Now you include them as co-protagonists.
That goes to what I always say about Democrats is they always argue within the frame that the Republicans give them instead of setting the frame. And what Epstein tells me, and look, none of us, I'm not going to bullshit anybody, say I've gone through all 3 million freaking files and the Epstein files and all the millions that weren't released. I've done my fair share of diving into it, but hey, there are people who have read a lot more than me. But what the gestalt that I get is that there are rules for one set of individuals and there are rules for us. And as George Carlin said, it's a party and you're not invited.
It's a big club and you ain't in it.
Yeah, what it boils down to is that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. I think if you maintain that framework, you get, Donald Trump said 2-3 weeks ago, 80% of the people agree with us that violent criminal immigrant offenders should be deported. And I'm going to tell him I think that's a low number. I think the only people who don't want violent criminal immigrants deported are the violent criminal immigrants. But I think it's a pretty universal.
Yeah, but the demonization, widespread demonization.
But that's where the trouble begins. And I think that there are more people that agree with the idea that the rich get richer and the poor get poorer, but we don't hear it. When Donald Trump says 80% are with me, we don't dissect that and go, no, idiot, 80% aren't with you. 80% are with the rest of us. And you're the guy that's shooting people, American citizens in the back and detaining them illegally and refusing due process. If we just framed it the right way, Donald Trump finds a frame that gets people to go, well, yeah, I'm with that 80%. We need to get rid of those violent criminals. Yes, we all agree. We need to get rid of the violent criminals, but you've got to adhere to due process. If there were someone in the Democratic Party who could reframe it and put it together so that everyone understands it and agrees in concept, because who the hell's going to disagree with prosecuting violent criminal offenders? It's just ridiculous. You don't have to shoot people in the back or an innocent woman in the face to do it. You don't have to drag people out of their home. You need to follow the. When he said, "Why are you upset with me?" Because Bush and Obama and who was it else? He said Clinton. They deported more people than I have, and I go, yeah, they followed due process. They did it right without putting kids in prison or throwing the poor guy on the street who's just trying to get a job into a hellhole. How ICE used to work as 4 or 6 people working as an investigative group, but that's not what Donald Trump wanted. He wanted a spectacle. Well,
That's it.
I'll change that. I'll amend that. It was Stephen Miller that wanted that spectacle and got it and convinced Donald of it. So
And now we're stuck. Now we're all stuck, folks. And I think, look, he's negative double digits on the economy, negative double digits on immigration, negative double digits on foreign policy. There's 50% of Americans want to say abolish ICE. I think, and then over 70% of Americans don't like this war. 70% of Americans, by the way, now don't want AI data centers in their backyard.
right,
And so I think, and also, I don't know if you saw in a 2-to-1 poll in California just yesterday, most of them want to tax the billionaires. Even when it comes to Fox
yes,
News, they want to tax the billionaires. So guess what's happening? The billionaires in California are now putting $500 million to win over the 2026 and 2028 elections. I'm telling you, with the Epstein files, the more and more it comes out, you have a win. The reason why they're not messaging this way, Brian, and I know people don't like hearing this is the fact, is because this Democratic leadership, I'm not talking about all Democrats, are paid by the very same people. They're paid by
no
crypto,
shit.
AI, Palantir. They're paid by APAC. They're now setting up super PACs in advance of the 2026 and 2028 elections that are, wait for it, pro-growth, anti-regulation.
Yeah.
That's the reason why they haven't done this, and that's the reason why they're so threatened by someone who did do this successfully. Mamdani did this successfully. He literally gave you a roadmap. It's literally right in front of you.
He can't work everywhere in the U.S., but the roadmap.
But just use the roadmap.
Yeah, and because I think there's a place. I do still see it, a place where people can meet. I have seen MAGA people who have embraced progressive causes and progressive stances. I have seen people who are progressive who do want to limit certain things that would be considered conservative. It would be a conservative stance. I've seen that people can meet there, but I don't see that anyone's encouraging that. Now, Mamdani's roadmap can be used, but it's got to be adapted to, I think, you're not going to get Mamdani or AOC elected in West Virginia. Or
But you could use
Kentucky.
the same
By the way,
story.
Eastern Kentucky is where you go when you flunk out of West Virginia, but that's another story. But
you could use the same story. The same story resonates. I was talking yesterday to
yes,
Perry
rich
Bacon
versus
of the New
poor.
Republic.
Rich versus poor.
Rich versus poor. And he said, to your point, the framing that the Democrats use, how they literally use the Republicans' frame, is wrong. So the New Republic did a poll, and it shows that the alleged mythical moderate centrist voter, which we all are told by Democrats and corporate media, is this white guy drinking real coffee in the Rust Belt who's like hates the woke and is conservative. He said, actually, for Democrats, that moderate Democrat is actually black, older, middle class. And guess what? It coincides with what the New York Times found out recently when they did their kind of remarkable study, right, with 13 voters, is that they are all, wait for it, these moderate voters are actually for progressive economic policies. So the headline was, moderate Democrats really aren't that moderate anymore. It shifted from
No, they
Carville,
just don't like the language. It's the language that's used.
But go on economic populism, and they want Democrats to be fighters. They think Democrats are too timid. Anyone who takes on the billionaires, Brian, it's a win across the board. They want more affordable health care. It's a win.
Waj, I vote for the first guy that puts a commercial together that says, "Hi, my name is," state your name. "I'm running for," state the office. "I promise to support the U.S. Constitution when I'm elected. Vote for me." I'm giving that guy a shot at least. I make him quote the goddamn Constitution, but it would be nice if there was someone who just recognized the laws of the land by which we live. I think that we get bound up and we wring our hands and gnash our teeth at the words woke and canceled. And what we really need to be working on is the fact that it's the rich versus the poor.
That's it. Top versus bottom.
Yeah, and
That's
there is
that's
no
the
middle
winning
class
strategy.
anymore. This is the first generation of Americans that are suspected of being or are predicted to do worse off than their parents. That's not, no parent wants that. No parent wants that. Not whether you're conservative, whether you're liberal. We all want our kids to do better than we did. We all want a world where that's possible. And I don't see that as I look at the war in the Middle East. What frightens me more than anything is, will there be a world left at all for my
We
grandchildren?
don't know yet. I think this is going to be bad. Look, if they're sending 2,300 troops,
That's a start.
yeah, I mean that means ground war isn't out of the question. If God forbid
That
there's
is
a
a ground
ground
war.
war,
If
yeah,
you
if,
send in the Marines, they're not flying from. They're the Marines are the expeditionary force. They send, those are the hard cases, man. You're sending in the Marine Corps. You're sending in some shit. We
yeah,
ain't
yeah,
messing
yeah.
around,
You're not doing just air raids.
right?
You're not just bombing from ships. You're sending in troops,
Yeah,
soldiers.
and that's how
Uh,
Vietnam started, by the way.
yep,
It was
yep.
advisors, it was bombing, and then it was the Marines, and then after that, then they, when they started gearing up after Kennedy died, they sent in the infantry, and that's when all hell breaks loose. I hope at some point in time it just I my look. I grew up in the Cold War. I remember when um, our next door neighbor had a bomb shelter and threatened to kill anybody that would try to get into it if there were bombs dropped, because he was going to take care of his family. I recommend anybody who doesn't understand how this can go, just watch the movie The Day After. That was a great movie experience. And then afterwards, that was when Ted Koppel had an ABC News panel, and it was the first time we heard the words nuclear winter. And Carl Sagan uttered those words, and he said, imagine two opponents who are sitting in a room up to their neck with with a gasoline, and each of them have thousands of matches, and they're arguing over who has more matches. It all ends up the same way, folks. And I that's my I don't think we're even aware of how quickly this can turn ugly. There's already talk of tactical nukes in the battlefield. That doesn't go well.
There you go. I would not put it past it. Iran has, excuse me, Israel has nukes. U.S. has nukes,
Yeah,
and we have two madmen desperately trying to stay in power. Netanyahu, in addition to being an extremist, also
is a
realizes the
criminal.
more yeah, he's a criminal, much like Donald Trump, and realizes the more he prolongs the war, the more he can stay in power, and the more he can escape accountability. So he wants this war until he dies. And if he can get Israel in a war with Lebanon, in a war with Syria, in a war with Iran, with the West Bank, Gaza, hey, do you want me or do you want some other guy to come in? Perpetual war, perpetual fear, folks. We don't have to live like this. We need more and more people to speak up. But one thing is comforting, to end on a positive note, Brian, is it ain't working. The same lies ain't working. The same tricks ain't working. People are like you. Even the hate mongering against Muslims doesn't seem to be working as much. People are like, aren't we killing Palestinians and Lebanese and Iranians? And I know Muslims, not all of them are like this. And how does this help? And he started this war with the majority of Americans, nearly 60% against it. That is unheard of in your lifetime and my lifetime. Every time there's a war in the Middle East, like the president, no matter how unpopular it is, gets 80, 90% support. So he started on the back foot, and now every day it's getting worse and worse.
Well, I will end it with this hopeful note. You said that there are 25% of the people will never reach. You go back to the Revolutionary War, 25% of the people were Tories, sided with England. Civil War, 25% of the population was the Confederacy. The Vietnam War, 25%.
Yeah, I think 32%,
Yeah,
when the last copters left.
yeah. Well, that's so. We always have that group that you can never reach. But I think, to your point, and I am hopeful in that regard. I do think that people are waking up. I'm sorry if people don't like the word woke in this regard, but I'll say you're waking up to the realities that are being instituted across the world, and it's frightening in its scope if we don't. So with that said, I mean, we could do this all day, but what do you want to plug, brother? It's always good to see you.
Nothing, man. Thanks for inviting me. I'm at right at the Left Hook, theleft.hook.substack.com. Everything is free. There's no paywalls. I've also started a YouTube channel at YouTube with Jatali. Everything is free. So if you can, try to read me there, and then I bring in smart guests like Brian, who are smarter than me, to talk about the world issues.
I just brush my teeth regular. That's all I claim.
Hey, which is more than most.
With that said, Waj, I love having you, brother. It's always good conversation. This is Just Ask the Question. I am your host, Brian Karem. We'll catch you next time.